But yeah, it's 8 o'clock.
Okay, Hare Krishna, everyone. It's 8, so we'll go ahead and get started. Today, we're fortunate enough to be joined by His Holiness Giridhari Swami. Maharaj likes to chant before the program. So, Maharaj, without further ado, the floor is yours.
Hare Krishna, thank you again. Feel privileged to be here this evening for you, this morning for me. Can you give me access to the share screen, please?
You can share screen now, Raj. It's enabled.
Okay, so this evening I'll begin by chanting one bhajan. And it's from Srila Narottam Das Thakur. It's kind of relevant to what I wanted to speak about this evening. Vaishnava Vigyapati. So I'm going to chant this through 2 times, and you can join in the second. Please keep your mics muted, though. Ibara karuna koro Vaishnava Goshai Ibara karuna koro Vaishnava Goshai Patita Pavana Toma Bine Kehonai Patita Pavana Toma Bine Kehonai Jaharani Kate Gele Papa Dure Jai Jaharani Kate Gele Papa Dure Jai Himona Dayala Prabhu Keba Kotapai Himona Dayala Prabhu Keba Kotapai Gangara Parasa Hoile Paschate Pavan Gangara Parasa Hoile Paschate Pavan Darshane Pavitra Ko Eto Maragun Darshane Pavitra Ko Eto Maragun Aristane Aparadhe Tare Hare Nam Haristane Aparadhe Tare Hare Nam Tomastane Aparadhe Nahi Paritran Tomastane Aparadhe Nahi Paritran Tomara Ridoye Sada Govinda Vishram Govinda Vishram Govinda Kohena Mora Vaishnava Param Govinda Kohena Mora Vaishnava Param Prati Janme Kori Asha Charan Nera Duli Prati Janme Kori Asha Charan Nera Duli Narotami Koro Doya Apanara Boli Narotami Koro Doya Apanara Boli Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Vaishnav Thakur Vaishnav Thakur Jai Vaishnav Thakur Jaya Vaishnav Thakur Vaishnav Thakur Vaishnav Thakur Jai Vaishnav Thakur Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Radha Shama Sundar Radha Shama Sundar Shri Radhe Jaya Radha Shama Sundar Radha Shama Sundar Shri Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe Haribo 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 Nitai Gaur, Haribo Nitai Gaur, Haribo, Haribo, Haribo Nitai Gaur, Haribo. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shishi Gaur Nitai ki jai, Shishi Radha Shama Sundar ki jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Nitai Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. I'll go ahead and read the translation. O Vaishnava Goswami, please be merciful to me now. There is no one except you who can purify the fallen souls. Where can anyone find such a merciful personality whose mere audience sends all sins far away? One becomes purified by bathing in the waters of the sacred Ganges many times, but just the sight of you purifies the fallen souls. This is your great power. The holy name delivers one who has offended Lord Hari, but deliverance is impossible if one offends you. Your heart is always the resting place of Lord Govinda, and Lord Govinda says, the Vaishnavas are in my heart. I desire to have the dust of your holy feet in every birth I may take. Please consider Narottam yours and be kind upon him. Srila Narottam Das Thakur ki jai. So I've chosen a verse for this evening's class, and this is from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is in the chapter Sri Madhavendra Puri's devotional service. Go ahead and chant the verse. Aidina dayantranata he maturanata kadabalokshase hridayam tvad aloka kataram dayita brahmayati kim karomyaham. I.e., O my Lord, Dina, on the poor, Daya Adra, compassionate, Nata, O Master, He, O Mathura Nata, the Master of Mathura, Kada, when, Avalokshase, I shall see you, Hridayam, my heart, Tvat, of you, Loka, without seeing, Kataram, very much aggrieved, Dayita, O most beloved, Brahmayati, becomes overwhelmed, Kim, what, Karomi, shall do, Aham, I. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. O my Lord, O most merciful Master, O Master of Mathura, when shall I see you again? Because of my not seeing you, my agitated heart has become unsteady. O most beloved, what shall I do now? Purport. The uncontaminated devotees, who strictly depend on the Vedanta philosophy, are divided into 4 sampradayas, or transcendental parties. Out of the 4 sampradayas, the Sri Madhvacharya Sampradaya was accepted by Madhavendra Puri. Thus he took sannyas according to Parampara, the disciplic succession. Beginning from Madhvacharya down to the spiritual master of Madhavendra Puri, the Acharya named Lakshmipati, there was no realization of devotional service in conjugal love. Sri Madhavendra Puri introduced the conception of conjugal love for the first time in the Madhvacharya Sampradaya, and this conclusion of the Madhvacharya Sampradaya was revealed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he toured southern India and met the Tattvavadis, who supposedly belonged to the Madhvacharya Sampradaya. When Sri Krishna left Vrindavan and accepted the kingdom of Mathura, Srimati Radharani, out of ecstatic feelings of separation, expressed how Krishna can be loved in separation. Thus, devotional service and separation is central to this verse. Worship and separation is considered by the Gaudiya Madhva Sampradaya to be the topmost level of devotional service. According to this conception, the devotee thinks of himself as very poor and neglected by the Lord. Thus he addresses the Lord as Dina Dayadra Nata, as did Madhavendra Puri. Such an ecstatic feeling is the highest form of devotional service. Because Krishna had gone to Mathura, Srimati Radharani was very much affected, and she expressed herself thus: "My dear Lord, because of your separation, my mind has become overly agitated. Now tell me, what can I do? I am very poor, and you are very merciful. So kindly have compassion upon me, and let me know when I shall see you." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was always expressing the ecstatic emotions of Srimati Radharani that she exhibited when she saw Uddhava at Vrindavan. Similar feelings experienced by Madhavendra Puri are expressed in this verse. Therefore, Vaishnavas in the Gaudiya Madhva Sampradaya say that the ecstatic feelings experienced by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu during his appearance came from Sri Madhavendra Puri through Ishvara Puri. All the devotees in the line of the Gaudiya Madhva Sampradaya accept these principles of devotional service. If you are expecting a class on Vipralambha Bhav and the mood of separation, we're not going to speak about that. But we should understand that we have the highest philosophy, and that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came in the mood of Srimati Radharani to give us the highest form of devotion, which is actually feeling separation. We should feel that we should know that we're making advancement if we are feeling some separation from the Lord. We may be very far from that, but yet we aspire to such a state of consciousness. Now, this verse, which has been spoken by Madhavendra Puri, interestingly enough, comes up in another place. And this is in the chapter where Ramachandra Puri, he is the disciple of Madhavendra Puri, he gets into a mood of criticism. And this is really the point of this evening's class. Madhavendra Puri, towards the end of his life, he would regularly recite this verse because he was feeling separation from the Lord. He was feeling separation from the Lord's holy abode, Mathura. And so naturally he would regularly recite this verse. One of his disciples, one of his principal disciples, Srila Ishvara Puri, of course the spiritual master of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was a very intimate disciple, and he was performing very intimate services for his spiritual master. At this point in Madhavendra Puri Prabhu's life, Goswami's life, he needed some very personal service. It is said that Ishvara Puri even went to the extent of cleaning up his stool and urine, because that was required at that point. And he would also recite various verses. It's said that he would chant the holy name. He would choose certain verses that would help Madhavendra Puri in his mood of separation from the Lord. And so in this way, Srila Ishvara Puri then became the favor got the favor of Srila Madhavendra Puri and got his full mercy and blessings. So he was certainly very much blessed, and as a result, he became so exalted. that he could become the spiritual master of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now, on the other hand, in Madhavendra Puri's last days, another disciple, Ramachandra Puri, came, and he was very much infatuated with his own advancement, or his imagined advancement in devotional service. And when he saw Madhavendra Puri calling out in a type of lamentation, "Where is my Lord? I have failed to achieve my Lord. I have failed to achieve Mathura." Ramachandra Puri, he thought that Madhavendra Puri was simply lamenting on the material platform, and therefore he dared to advise him. He said, if you're actually situated in Brahman consciousness, if you're actually feeling Brahmananda, bliss, then why are you lamenting? Why are you lamenting that you didn't attain Krishna and you didn't attain the Lord's holy abode, Mathura? He said, one who's experiencing Brahmananda, he should not lament. He should not hanker and he should not lament. So in this way, Madhavendra Puri then became quite disturbed, and to teach us all the example, he rebuked Madhavendra Puri, and he told him that, I don't want to see your face. You are disturbing my meditation on the Lord. And in this way, Ramachandra Puri then got the opposite, we can say. If Ishvara Puri got the mercy, well, he got the chastisement, the rod of chastisement. And as a result of that offense to his spiritual master, then he became a very kind of a dry philosopher, and he became a critic of the devotees. Once when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Paramananda Puri were together, Ramachandra Puri came, and the two of them, Mahaprabhu and Paramananda Puri, they offered their obeisances to Ramachandra Puri because he was the disciple of Madhavendra Puri. So, and they embraced and they discussed Krishna a little bit. Of course, what was in the mind of Ramachandra Puri, we can only, try to imagine based on the things that happened afterwards. But Ramachandra Puri's general mood was to find fault. Jagannatha Pandit actually invited Ramachandra Puri to take some Mahaprasad. This is, of course, all said in Jagannath Puri. He had obtained quite a large quantity of Lord Jagannath's prasadam, and he had Ramachandra Puri sit down, and he fed him quite well. Ramachandra Puri was quite pleased, and after he washed his hand and his mouth, then he said, well, let me serve you, Jagannatha. You've served me so nicely, now let me serve you. So he induced Jagannatha Pandit to take more and more and more, much more than he would normally take. And as soon as Jagannatha finished, then Ramachandra Puri started. He said, I've heard that the followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they actually eat too much. Now I have seen this with my own eyes, that you too are eating too much. So this was his technique. He would induce others to eat more than they could, and then after they finish, he would criticize them for eating too much. Now, this went on, and he had the audacity to try to find fault with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was watching and watching, very long and very hard. He couldn't find any fault. He was trying to monitor Mahaprabhu's eating habits, his sleeping habits, his so-called indulging in sense gratification. You couldn't find anything. But then one day it occurred to him, Mahaprabhu eats too many sweets. So he found a fault, or at least an imagined fault. And then he just declared to everyone, this so-called renunciate, he's taking too many sweetmeats. Therefore, how can he control his senses? One fine morning, he comes to visit Mahaprabhu, and he sees that there are many ants that are going into Mahaprabhu's room. And then he tells him, the fact that these ants are here, this is indicative of the fact that you were secretly eating sweetmeats in this room. And these ants are coming to get the remnants. So in this way, Mahaprabhu, after he hears this, he then takes a vow that he will cut in half his intake of foodstuff. So from that point on, he only takes half of the quantity that he normally takes. Govinda was also taking half, and eventually all of his followers began to take much less than they normally did. This went on for some time. This too was not to appease Ramachandra Puri. He came back one day and he said, now I understand that you're eating half the amount you normally take. Well, it is said that a sannyasi should be, moderate. He shouldn't take too much. He shouldn't take too little. So now you're taking too little. So you're also breaking these regulative principles. You're taking too little. So you couldn't win with Ramachandra Puri, either it was too much or too little. He was just a professional fault finder. Still, Mahaprabhu went on with his vow, and it was quite painful to the devotees. Interesting kind of aside here. You may have heard this before from Giriraj Swami, but it's quite a famous story, that he and Indraduma Swami were in, as I remember, South Africa, and they were invited to the home of some very hospitable couple, Indian couple, and they were really fabulous cooks. And they were, serving preparation after preparation. But the way they were serving, they were just bringing one preparation at a time out. So they had no idea of knowing how many preparations were going to come. So they kept coming and coming and coming. They thought, this is certainly last. No, there's another one and yet another one. And so at one point, His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj, he turns Indraduma Swami, says, this is really too much. I really cannot take any more. He said, what to do? And then Indraduma Swami, he said, well, just like the Bhagavad Gita says, the yogi is one, he doesn't eat too much or eat too little, doesn't sleep too much or sleep too little. And this evening, we're focusing on not taking too little. So like this. And so somehow or another they finished that evening. Ramachandra Puri, he could not win with this person. He was just a critic. So the whole thing starts with his finding fault with his spiritual master, and then it extended to finding fault with all of the Vaishnavas. And in this way, he became a blasphemer of devotees, and eventually his creeper dried up. It is said that at some point he leaves Puri, and everyone was very relieved. But the whole point is that there are two personalities here. There's Ishvara Puri. He was the recipient of the mercy of Madhavendra Puri, became a very glorious devotee of the Lord, became the spiritual master of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And we have Ramachandra Puri, who is the recipient of a rebuke from Madhavendra Puri. And as a result, his devotion dried up. It led to him committing offenses to the devotees. So, quite serious. Now, this is very important for us to reflect on, I believe, as aspiring Vaishnavas. In our association with others, there's always a tendency. Perhaps the fact that we've turned our backs on Krishna and, we ourselves are very much impersonally inclined because of that. We're quick to say that we're personalists, we follow a personal philosophy, but the highest expression of impersonalism was exhibited by us when we turned our backs on Krishna. So hence, when we come in this world and we get an opportunity to again come in the association of the Lord and the Lord's devotees, there can be a tendency to see devotees as ordinary persons. There's that saying that familiarity breeds contempt. By not appreciating devotees, by not remaining in a mood of service to the devotees, you can relativize them and start to see things, whether they're imagined or whether they're very slight little kind of mistakes that devotees make. And then with the fault-finding mentality, the mood of Ramachandra Puri, then it's quite possible that we can begin to speak ill, or we can act ill against the devotees, and the result of that is something very, very serious. Just as Ramachandra Puri fell down from the platform of devotional service, we too can fall down. It may not be in the exact same way as Ramachandra Puri, but certainly we may lose taste for devotional service. Someone may say that, well, I haven't left. I've been here for the last 20 years, 25 years. I'm still here. I haven't left. But at the same time, one may be offensive to Vaishnavas, but may not have much taste for devotional service. One may not be chanting the holy name with relish. One may not be engaged in devotional service very seriously. So one may be able to coast for some period of time. And at some point, Krishna may just pull the plug totally, and one may go away from the association of devotees. So just the fact that one is still engaged doesn't mean that the Lord is favoring it. It's just that there's a period of time until the results of the offenses, take place. But generally the way things work is that one gradually loses taste for chanting, for reading, for engaging in devotional service in general, loses the enthusiasm, really doesn't appreciate the association of devotees, and even if one does associate, one doesn't take the association based on Rupa Goswami's 6 loving exchanges. Because associating with devotees means service. The question we should ask, any time that we're coming in the association of devotees is, how may I serve you, Prabhu? Prabhu means master, right? We see the others as our masters. And when we come in their association, we should ask. We should be eager to render service. And so this is the whole mood of Rupa Goswami, that we offer prasad, we receive prasad, we offer gifts, we receive gifts, we reveal our minds, we offer confidential instruction like this. So these exchanges are there, but it's all based on the mood of service, that we want to render service to the other devotees. And this is what makes the whole process work. Without it, It doesn't. The whole basis of Krishna consciousness is Vaishnava Seva. By serving devotees nicely, one advances steadily in Krishna consciousness. One gets blessings of the devotees, and one gets blessings of Guru, one gets blessings of the divine couple. But if we don't serve the devotees, then we will never get those blessings. We, say that we're sadhikas, and we hear that there's different ways of attaining perfection. There's sadhana, siddhi, that one has attained perfection through the process of sadhana. Of course, there's the nitya siddha, the eternally liberated soul. And there's something called kripa siddha, that one has gotten some special mercy from the Lord or the Lord's devotees. And this has enabled one to advance very quickly. So our process is really a combination of serious sadhana. Prabhupada said sincere and serious sadhana. But it has to be coupled with kripa. We have to behave in such a way that we will invite the mercy of the Lord and the mercy of the Lord's devotees. The mercy of the Lord follows the mercy of his devotees. If we don't get the mercy of the devotees, we will never get the mercy of the Lord. So therefore it's so important to render service to the devotees, practical service, not just lip service, but practical. We should be doing something that will please them. And if you don't know, then you should ask. You should observe. You should see what is needed. Or you can ask others like this to see. And, it's not that it requires a tremendous amount of resources to serve. We can do it very simply. Anyone can cook something, could offer like that, and please the devotees through serving them some nice prasadam like this. Anyone can give a gift. The gift doesn't have to be so expensive. It could be something that has great spiritual value, but little material value. I mean, little things like, photos of the deities, or even some, I remember, I may have said this before, but years ago, there was an occasion in Mayapur, and our Burijan Prabhu, we gave everyone a ball of tilak. How much does that cost? Little things like this, devotional items, photos of the deities, counter beads, bead bags, devotional attire. It goes on, various things that we could do. Gift a book, anything. Again, it doesn't cost very much, but to give someone a gift is a very powerful exchange, and it's following in the footsteps of our Rupa Goswami. So Rupa Goswami gave us these 6 principles for good reason. And, he's our acharya. Prabhupada said that we should become Rupanugas, follow in the footsteps. Follow in the footsteps means we can't imitate, but we follow the instructions that are given by such great souls. And to the extent we can do that, to that extent, we make advancement in devotional service. The devotional service is a process. Probably often called it a science. If you follow the recipe, the way it's given, then the result is automatically achieved. Just like if you're baking something, if you select the proper ingredients in the proper proportions and you combine them, and bake them in a certain amount of heat for a certain amount of time, then you come up with the desired result. But if somewhere along the line you omit something or you adjust something, then the desired result will not be there. I don't know if I told you this story before, but you know, when you're giving these classes daily, you don't know. Anyway, is it just me? So, so years ago, I had a practical experience of this. That so when I was young, I learned how to make this really nice carrot cake. Carrot cake, I'm sure you've all had it, but it's not just all carrots, right? You have a certain amount of carrots in there, and along with flour, and along with butter and water and sugar and so on and so forth. But it's quite a wonderful preparation, actually. So I learned this when I was young, and you know, I brought this to devotional service, if you will, and it was one of the preparations we used to make. And so once there was a gathering in Dallas. This was back in, would have been the late 70s. And there was a lot of leaders there. And I was, you know, kind of deputed to do the cooking for them. So I was thinking all the best preparations. We have to give them the best preparations. So I thought, well, this carrot cake would be a perfect thing for them. And you know, I had the recipe, and the quantity was larger than usual. So I kind of multiplied it out, and you know, it made sense that it was going to come out well, but somehow or another, it didn't. The multiplication doesn't always work like that. But so I mixed all the ingredients, I put in the oven, and had it, you know, at the temperature for a certain amount of time. But when I pulled, you know, this tray out, the pan out of the oven, and I stuck the knife in there, I found in my, you know, great horror that it wasn't cooked. It was just mushy. And I put it in again. I think, well, I didn't cook long. I put it in longer. And then what happened is that the bottom burned. So I couldn't, nothing I could do to salvage this. And this is what's supposed to be one of the main preparations. So I failed miserably. And why? Because I altered the recipe. Somehow or another, I altered the recipe and it didn't come out. So we can do that with Krishna consciousness. We can alter the recipe, sometimes unknowingly, sometimes knowingly. But we should realize that to the extent we alter it, to that extent, the desired result will not be there. And the main way that we alter the recipe is by adding in the ingredient of Vaishnav aparad, which should never be added to the recipe. And that's very clear in the case of Ramachandra Puri. So these are some thoughts I had. We can leave the last few minutes for some reflections, perhaps.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Okay,
Thank
go
you
ahead.
for coming again. So my question is, Maharaj, Ramchandra Puri was such a fault finder. How he got so lucky to have association, not only association, but initiation from Madhavendra Puri. And on top of that, he has association of Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Gauranga. How that happened, Maharaj?
Well, we're given opportunities. I mean, you know, there are so many examples of this. Persons being given opportunities and they misuse the opportunities. I mean, there were so many disciples of Prabhupada, you know, who got his personal association. They were sometimes cast into roles as personal servants, personal secretaries, or they were his Sanskritists. They traveled with him and they assisted him with the translations of his books and so on. But some of those devotees, sadly, they found fault with Prabhupada, and as a result, they fell down from devotional service. So the opportunity is offered, but with that little bit of independence, that tiny amount of independence that we're afforded, if we choose to misuse it, then it may have disastrous results. So it happens. I mean, Krishna's pastimes, sometimes these personalities are there. They have the choice. It all boils down to the amount of free will. It boils down to how we use that free will. Sorry. But the point
Thank
is,
you, Maharaj. That's why we need your association, so we'll not misuse this. That's why this is such a mercy to have this, your association and other senior Prabhupada Disciple Association. Maharaj, thank you very much.
were you worried I wasn't going to appear?
No, Maharaj, I was not worried because you have given your word.
Well, there's also the factor that I can't stand to see grown men cry, so I did decide to make good on my word.
That would have happened, Maharaj. Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Yeah. But the main point there is like the recipient of mercy, right? Taking advantage of the opportunity. You know, one, Ishvara Puri, he takes complete complete advantage of the opportunity, right? And he serves so nicely. He understands the mood. But how does he understand the mood? He understands it through the medium of service. You know, so he was serving so nicely, and then, you know, his consciousness was open, his heart was open, and so then he could understand the mood of Madhavendra Puri. And then he assisted him in the way he chanted, certain verses he selected, and this enhanced the mood of Madhavendra Puri and assisted him. So he was able to, you know, meditate on the Lord and be in that mood of separation. So he was the recipient of mercy. And then, of course, Ramachandra Puri, by his consciousness, note, he wasn't doing service, huh? He came as thinking that he was Brahman realized, and he wasn't in the mood of service. We don't hear that he was rendering any service to Madhavendra Puri. Madhavendra Puri was in his last days, and certainly as a disciple, he could have done something, but we don't hear he did anything. We only hear he came there, and he simply criticized. So there was no service. So the mood of service is very important then to prepare the consciousness, open up the consciousness to receive mercy. If the service mood is not there, the service attitude, Prabhupada says, if it's not there, then it'll be much less likely we'll attract that kind of mercy.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Something else?
Yeah, I have one question. And on the
Sure.
same topic there, actually, and I have heard devotees mentioning that in Nectar of Devotion, saying that devotees should know how to differentiate between the devotees. And on that, that comment, people also try to make offense, criticize the Vaishnavas. So where basically, where do they draw the line? And people, how not to get into that habit, and and in the name of differentiation, actually start committing Vaishnava Aparadh. So how do they actually differentiate those? and not to get into that.
Yeah. Thank you. It's true. We do hear in various places the description of, the different levels of devotees, from the Kanishta, the Madhyam to the Uttamadhikaris and all of that. The safest position for us as aspiring devotees is to always be in the mood that everyone is, our master, Prabhu. That will always be the safest position. We certainly will not lose anything by serving other devotees. We'll only gain. So we should be very, very careful with this, to turn that critical eye and trying to understand. Because if someone's, let's say, for the sake of argument, if someone's more advanced than us, then we won't really be able to understand it so clearly. Someone could be more advanced, but we may not be able to understand it because we're on a lower level. It takes someone on that same level or more advanced to understand that. So, yeah, it's there, but we should be very careful how we apply it. Very careful. But it's not that we should be ostriches and simply, stick our heads in the sand and just, not be aware if devotees are doing certain things which are incorrect. If we have the relationship with them, then we can try to speak to them and explain that, Prabhu, what is, I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to understand. So seek first to understand. If we don't have a relationship, or if it's a very kind of, complicated situation, then we can appeal to someone else who may have a relationship with them, someone they respect, and that person may have a better chance of affecting change like this. But we should be, we should be very cautious. We should be very cautious. Again, we don't just put our heads in the sand, but there are ways to get things done. There are ways to get things done, and we should go through the proper channels. Maybe there's, let's say, in the context of a group or a temple or whatever, if there's a leader, that leader might be informed, or if there's someone who's clearly that person's mentor. You have cases where someone has brought another person to Krishna consciousness, for example, and then maybe that particular devotee will have influence over him or her. That's possible also. But personally, I think we should be very, very careful in the Sangha of Vaishnavas and not turn that critical eye, trying to match up. So that's also, sometimes they're trying to match up. They've read this and they're trying to match up. Well, let's see. So, is Kanishta, these qualities are listed here. I see, well, he has seems to have that Kanishta quality there. Right, but I heard about the Madhyam, and he seems to have compassion. So maybe, how do we know, right? How do we know for sure? So I think we should be very careful. Be very careful with this.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Maharaj.
Maharaj.
Any other thoughts at all? Okay. So should we leave it at that? Like Gaur Sundar Prabhu?
Yes, Maharaj, I have no questions. I will not be able to have your question answered for next month. So if there's a final call, if you have any question for Maharaj, please don't hesitate.
Oh, how is our offensive attitude towards non-devotees dealt with by the Lord?
Okay. Well, our philosophy does teach that we should respect all living entities, even an ant. So it's not that we can just categorize those who are not devotees as those non-devotees, and sometimes use terms like the karmis, this and that, and then we're free to say anything or do anything and not expect any kind of reaction to those things. We're taught we should respect every living entity. And in the context of what was said earlier, the different categories of devotees, if we're aspiring to be madhyams, which means we love Krishna, we love Krishna's devotees, we have compassion for the innocent, and we avoid the envious. Well, if a non-devotee is at that point not introduced to Krishna consciousness, well, if we are truly madhyams or aspiring to be madhyams, and if we are compassionate, then we should help that person, in whatever ways we can. And kind of, we disregard a lot of the externals and things, people, the way that people speak, the way that people act. We're all conditioned by the modes of material nature, and we're being moved around by the material nature in various ways. So all of that is superfluous to the fact that the spirit soul is there, the part and parcel of Krishna. And so we should do our part to try to help them. And it can be something very, very, seemingly very, very small. Give someone a piece of prasadam, show some friendship towards them, show some a little bit of appreciation, affection, and develop a relationship. We were just yesterday. I do these interviews on Mondays, mostly for our China yatra, but I've been interviewing different devotees around the world. I've done quite a few now, many of them senior. But yesterday I did Devikananda Prabhu in Singapore, and you may not know him, but he's a wonderful Vaishnava. He's a lawyer by profession. He has a family. He's also a member of the GBC now. He's the legal counsel for the GBC, and he does so many things. So in the course of the interview, we were discussing about, both studying Prabhupada's books, but then also distributing the books to persons who may not yet have them. And I asked, so how do you do this? And he said he draws on relationships that he has with people. He tries to build relationships. Maybe they're clients, or it may be relatives, or maybe friends, and so on and so forth. So he tries to develop a relationship with them like that, so they feel that someone cares, they feel comfortable with this, and then he's able to introduce Krishna consciousness in Prabhupada's books, many of whom they get sets of books, interestingly enough. So the point is we shouldn't be so much in the mentality of us and they, that we are the devotees and we are the practitioners, and we are the recipients of Krishna's mercy, and everyone outside is doomed, to burn in hell for eternity. We should be, compassionate and try through whatever means are available to us to develop those relationships and to help those persons. Rather than to criticize the way they are, the way they speak, the way they act, and so on, do something that will help them to elevate their consciousness. And if people can come in contact with Prabhupada's books, there's no doubt that the consciousness can be elevated. Interesting enough, in this because it's fresh in my mind because it was just yesterday, in this interview. So this devotee, Devikananda Prabhu, so he was only 13 at the time, 13 years old, and a devotee somehow approached his mother on the street and interested her in some way, saying, would you like to? I think she used more like a Hindu education, for your children. And she was quite intrigued by that, quite attracted. And she actually invited the person to the house, the devotee to the house. And long story short, they ended up taking a set of the Bhagavatam. So here's this boy, young boy, 13 years old, and he's interested. He starts to read a bit of the Bhagavatam every day. Doesn't understand everything, but he just keeps reading and reading and reading, and eventually comes in the association of devotees like this, and he gradually becomes a very wonderful Vaishnava. So had that devotee not reached out, to his mother that day on that street, who knows what might have happened, It could have turned out quite differently. So, rather than use our energy in just kind of like trying to see how people are different than us and criticizing them because they're different from us, which is the tendency, the Ramachandra Puri syndrome that we all possess to a certain extent. Rather, see, well, there's a spirit soul. There's a part and parcel of Krishna. Same as me, And, well, here's an opportunity. Here's an opportunity. Can I inject a little bit, a little bit of Krishna consciousness? So, anyway, that's the point. But again, we don't want to offend any living entity, even an ant. That's what we're told. All right, we'll leave it at that. It is 9:02 for you. So thank you so much for having us again. And Krishna willing, we'll, appear again in about a month's time. All right? Thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to the assembled Vaishnavas.
Panchakalpatarubhyasya
Ya kripa
Ashanti
sindhu
Vaya Vaya Vacha.
Titanam Bhavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo Namo
Ah.
Maharaj ki jai.
Jai.
Thank you. Hari
Maharaj
Bol.
ki jai.
Hare
Don't log off yet. We still have to just sing the singer prayer, everyone. So don't log off yet. Amit Bhaiya, are the girls available? And everyone, please keep all the devotees in Mayapur, Bibi Govindam Raj. I did receive word from him today. He's feeling better. He thinks that he should be good to go in a few days. And so that's wonderful news. And my mommy, if everyone can keep her in our prayers while they fight COVID in India.
And today is also Darshana Auntie and Kiran Uncle's 50th wedding anniversary, too, so we can just give them a special blessings and keep them in our prayers as well.
Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Amit
You
Bhaiya?
don't give blessing, you receive blessing. Abhishek.
Receive
Oh,
blessings.
yeah, receive blessings. Sorry, yes.
So we'll take all kinds of blessings and good wishes. Thank you so much.
Blessings
Hare
from
Krishna.
Maharaj.
Thank you.
Raj,
Morning.
that's Shreya talking, I think.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Okay, I think Fayaz unmuted now. Okay.
Namaste Narasingaya.
Namaste Narasingaya.
Pranadadadaine. Hiranyakashipurvaksha.
Hiranyakashipurvaksha.
Shinatankanakalaye.
Shiratankanakalaye.
Ito nasingo parato nasingo.
Ito nasingo barato nasingo.
Yato yato yamitato nasingo.
Yato yato yamitato nasingo.
Mahi nasingo ridaye nasingo.
Mae nasingo inaye nasingo.
Narasingamadem sharanam prapade.
Narasingamadam sharanam papane.
Tava kare kamalavare nakamadbhuta shringam. Tadita hiranyakashipu tanupringam. Keshavadita narahari rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare
Tavakare kamalavare nakamabhuta shinga. Nalita hiranyakashipu tanuvringa. Keshavarita narari rupa Jaya Jaganisha Hare Jaya Jaganisha Hare Jaya Jaganisha Hare.
Jaya Nrsingadev Jaya Nrsingadev Jaya Nrsingadev Jaya Nrsingadev
Jaya Nrsingadev Jaya Nrsingadev Jaya Nrsingadev Jaya Nrsingadev.
Jaya Pranamara Jaya Pranamara Jaya Pranamara Jaya Pranamara
Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev
Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev.
Nrsimha Bhagwan ki
Jai
Hare
Hare
Krishna
Krishna.
Thank you, ladies. So that concludes this evening program. And we've already recited the Vaishnava Pranam prayer. So everyone have a great night. Hare
We
Krishna.
can do it again because I think everyone did not participate. It was Kim. Okay.
Sure.
Vanchakkalpataruvyascha kripasinubhyeva cha
Pītānaṁ pāvanebhyo
Pāvanebhyo
vaishnavebhyo namo
Vaishnavebhyo
namo.
namo
Vaishnavebhyo
namo.
Vaishnavebhyo
Hare
Namo
Krishna,
Namah
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.